Right. So yeah, no, bro. Yeah, we'll just kick off first. If you could just introduce yourself, Calvin. Where you interned at TupuToa and sort of how you ended up where you are now. They're cool.
Yeah, cool. So Calvin Davidson is me. From Auckland. A lot of my family, those from the East Coast, Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Kahungunu, and Ngāti Hine. But yeah, I'm pretty much born and raised in Auckland. I came through TupuToa. I was in the first round of TupuToa.
Very first cohort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was very cool. At the time, I was studying engineering and got in touch with TupuToa, who hooked me up with an internship at Microsoft, which was pretty sick. At Microsoft, my internship was really like marketing and operations. So it was kind of a bit of a weird fit. But obviously, big tech company, and I was studying a technical degree, and it would have been mad to turn down an internship from Microsoft. So obviously, I was going to take it, despite it not being exactly aligned with my studies. Um, and it was great, man. It was really, really great. It was like a year long, which was a bit different to
Mm.
a lot of the internships that are just sort of summer ones, but it was full time over the summer and then part time throughout the year, while I was doing my final year of engineering study. So I mean, broad questions in terms of how was it? Yeah, like I said, it was really great. There was a lot of learning. I guess in a number of ways. For one, I was doing kind of marketing stuff, which was not my area of expertise at all. Business marketing, all that kind of thing. Prior to studying engineering, I did do an arts degree and a music degree as well, which is a bit weird. So I did have some varied experience, but never quite went down the business route. So yeah, a lot to learn, and then secondly, like just being out in the working world and in a corporate environment was a bit of a shock to the system, but in a good way, all learning, all growth. It was a great place to work, man. I really valued that year spent there. In terms of the skills I gained and the people that I met, some of the people that I met in that internship group, not through TupuToa, I was the only TupuToa one, but they had their own sort of internship intakes as well. Some of those people are still some of my best mates, as well as professional connections as well from the people that I was working alongside and underneath. Really great support, great environment. Like it's a corporate place, but like maybe just by virtue of being a tech company, it's a bit less I don't know, a bit less maybe sort of uptight than I kind of stereotypically think of corporate spaces of being. There was drinks on Friday and a lot of sort of social things going on in amongst the work. Like there was a lot of hard work to get through and some sort of high pressure things. But yeah, I wasn't short on support and people to kind of help me out as well. So yeah, I think it'd be pretty hard for me to overstate, I think, the effects that internship had on me, and as well as the skills and growth. I think it kind of opened my eyes as to what is possible and what's sort of out there, and what I expect for myself and what I can achieve. You know what I mean? Um, there's like, it was, I mean, it felt a bit nuts in some sense. Like we went on a trip to Singapore in the middle of the year, where they got all the interns from the Asia Pacific region into sort of one building and did a week long kind of uh learning session and development session, and it was incredible. And I'm just sort of sitting there being like, well, like, is this normal? Is this what something that like people out in the world actually like do, just go on big overseas trips and like, oh, I'm learning, but also I'm just here like having fun in Singapore. So and yeah, from like a career perspective, I think, obviously I was at the tail end of my degree, so what am I going to do with my life was a pretty pertinent question. And it showed that there are a lot of options and so a lot of pathways, and it's often a matter of just sort of finding what that pathway you want is, finding out people to help you, and finding ways to sort of pursue that and get the support you need, and a lot more is possible than you probably realize. Is something that I sort of took away from that year. So yeah, I mean, unless you got any more questions on the internship itself, well, it was a few years ago now. That would have been
Yeah, yeah.
2017.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to sort of talk about it further, but otherwise, I went on through the grad program there and spent maybe like 4 years working at Microsoft in Melbourne, and then I left that role and into a new role that I've been in about 7 months at a company called Mod.io. So happy to talk about any points along that journey, but maybe I'll throw it to you first in case there's other stuff you want to cover.
Yeah. I guess, and you've touched on a few aspects of it, Calvin. I think, like you said, it's this whole thing about seizing opportunity, and sometimes not knowing what that looks like and where it will lead to.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I guess, there's that famous question, if you could go back and talk to, the younger Calvin who, before starting the internship at Microsoft, what's some advice you would give to him?
Oh man, probably exactly what you say, man. Like in terms of opportunity and just like not. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I think I kind of inadvertently handicapped myself in a lot of ways, And I mean, even going into an engineering degree, there's a long story there that I don't need to go into, but even the act of when I was deciding even should I do that, there was a lot of kind of I had this narrative about myself in terms of, oh, these are my interests. I like music and arts, and I still do. I still love those dearly. But it was there was a lot that made me kind of limit myself, I think, in terms of my interests and capabilities. And then going to engineering, going to the technical space was like, oh, actually, no, like I love this stuff and I can do it. But even then, let me put it this way, man. I when I was clearing out my room at the end of my internship and I was about to move to Melbourne for the grad program, I found a book of like goals that I'd written myself in my very first year of engineering. And I had to flick through it as you do. It's a book I'd totally forgotten about it. After setting my goals, don't forget about your goals as soon as you set them, like I did. But it still led to a nice moment. I was flicking through it, and this is at the point where I'd already sort of got this job lined up, and I was already pretty happy with where I was going. But flicking through some of my goals, I was like, shit, man, I had set the bar way too low. I had goals that were like, oh, earn X amount of dollars in my grad role, and within like a few years, oh, I want to be earning at least this much. Maybe have a stint overseas, and I just was like, shit, man, I can tick off these like first 5 goals, and I haven't even finished uni yet. You know what I mean? And it was just and like it's just because I didn't really realize where I had set the ceiling for myself, I think, and yeah, like I said, even going into engineering, like I was like, oh, I've kind of realized something about myself and broken through, and engineering can be a pretty lucrative career. Maybe I can get something out of this. But even then, I was still putting a ceiling on myself that I didn't realize I had. And if not for, like obviously there was a lot of hard work involved, but if not for the luck in some sense and the support that I got from people through TupuToa and through Microsoft, that ceiling probably would have remained, and I probably would have had no idea that it was even there. So I don't know. Advice to myself: break that ceiling.
Yeah, I love it. A quote I love from they say it's from Michelangelo. He says, the problem with people is that it's not that they aim too high and miss, it's that they aim too low and hit.
Yeah,
and I love what you said, because I feel like it's a big barrier for our community, Māori and Pacific.
Absolutely.
And I guess in the front, you're talking about just sort of like barriers, even just going into studying engineering. Were there many other Māori and Pacific in your classes?
Nah, not really. No, there was some. I wasn't alone. But we were the minority. It was so like I think. Yeah, I think we could do a lot better in terms of representing ourselves in those types of spaces. There was like a Māori program, a Māori and Pacifica program, like that I joined in first year to meet other Māori, and also just like get access to some extra tutorials and extra sort of support in general. And that was all super helpful. But even then, like you've got to have a bit of grit, I think, and just sort of push through. I wasn't, I got through my engineering degree, but there were some that, didn't make it all the way through, and maybe they just realized it wasn't what they wanted or whatever. But also, I don't know, I don't know, people like that personally, I wonder if maybe they could have sort of had a bit more support, but also could have had a bit more sort of like grit and self-determination too, to kind of fight through, because it's a tough degree already, you know, and it's only going to be a bit tougher if you feel kind of out of place. But you know, by the same token, I think you know, I'm pretty nerdy. I like nerdy stuff, and so like there are a lot of people that, even if they're not Māori Pacifica, that I fit in well with within the engineering degree, within the engineering course. There are other groups too, you know, like Māori Pacifica is one of them, but you know, there are also groups for you know, women in engineering, which you know, that's not my place, but still I imagine was good support for a lot of the women there, and some, you know, like queer groups and stuff like that within. So you know, depending on where you sort of fit in, like it's good to find your people, and there's probably more than one place where you can fit in, whether it's just doing normal nerdy stuff, or whether it's, you know, Māori Pacifica, LGBT, women, whatever. The support's there, but you know, no doubt engineering is dominated primarily by white men, and you know, that's also something, you know, like I said, as long as you kind of get on some of the nerdier vibes or whatever, I don't know, like you can fit in, but it makes a difference to find people that you're comfortable with, and that helps. And I should say as well, I majored in mechatronics and engineering, and that was like a fairly sort of small class, maybe like 30 people or something like that. So after a while, you kind of get to know your group, and you make friends, and you got some support sort of outside of the designated sort of support systems too. But however you find your way, it's important to find your people, I think, as you're studying, because it would be killer to do it alone, I think.
Hey man, I love the wisdom, man.
Oh, thanks.
And like, you know, like you mentioned, engineering is such a wide scope to it. And I said you yourself, you said, you know, you studied music and stuff prior.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, settling on mechatronics, bro, if you wouldn't mind sort of just giving an insight.
Yeah,
You made that decision.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, basically with engineering at this is Auckland University, I should say, and so it's you know, might be a bit different depending on where you're studying, but at Auckland you do first year general, and then you specialize for years 2, 3, 4, and basically at the end of your first year you kind of make a bid for what you want to get into, you rank your choices, and then get given something based on how, you know, how much demand there is. There's a, you know, if you're going to like civil engineering, there's heaps of people, for example, whereas like engineering science or biomed was like 10 people or something like that. Those numbers are probably different now, like several years down the line, but point is, you're not guaranteed a particular area. I ended up going to mechatronics for a number of reasons, mostly because I thought it sounded cool. Or I mean, it is cool. Like mechatronics is if you don't know, it's a mixture of mechanical and electrical, but also contains a lot of stuff to do with computer systems and programming, and a whole lot of stuff too. It's quite a broad discipline, but it lends itself well to a lot of systems that exist today, you know, like think of anything that has like mechanical components and also some kind of control computer system. So it's everything from like robotics, which is probably the sexiest example you can give with the mechatronics. But it's, you know, robotics is one, but also even just like your dishwasher or washing machines or anything, or all kind of mechatronic systems. It appealed to me because it combines a lot of stuff that I was into. I initially, when I first went to engineering, I was thinking of going the software route, but I ended up going mechatronics eventually because there were software components and computer components, but I really loved the math and the calculus that came, particularly with the mechanical side. So mechatronics for me got a blend of both worlds. But you know, like I think I would have been equally happy if I had majored in software engineering or even sort of computer engineering or even engineering science. I would have loved to. So any of those I would have been super into. But for me, I guess mechatronics was the perfect blend of a bunch of stuff. I guess the drawback is because it's general, you don't get to go heaps deep in any one particular area. But overall, mechatronics was a great fit at the time.
No, awesome, man. And I guess, you know, like you said, went to Microsoft, and I guess if you could sort of talk about, you know, shifting from Microsoft, which sounds like a sales role, and I know we talked last time, you said you've done really well. You actually managed to pay off your student loan, which is
Oh yeah,
Sounds like a dream for a lot of us.
yeah.
But yeah, but, shifting from that sales role into mod IO at the moment, which my
Yeah,
understanding
yeah.
is a lot more sort of technical, if you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good point to call out, man, because it was yeah, I feel like I've been on a pretty weird journey throughout my out my short career so far. I've been out so my first year in a real job, in air quotes, like but in a job out of uni was in 2018. So, I've only been out in the workforce for sort of, 4 or 5 years, and made a bunch of changes already. I think maybe to start, just to talk about my role at Microsoft first, and then what kind of drove me to change. So like I said, my internship at Microsoft was marketing, and then I was going for grad roles. There was some 15 to 20, I think, grad roles throughout Australia and New Zealand when I was applying. And all of them were some kind of salesy business stuff. I think that's changed now as far as Microsoft goes. There are some software engineering roles within Microsoft within Australia and New Zealand. There's not heaps of them, but at least at the time, all the most software dev with Microsoft is done out of Seattle, and like a few other places, some places in Europe. But as for my options at the time, it was kind of these roles within Aussie and New Zealand that were all pretty salesy. So I was at a bit of a crossroads, right? Because I'd just done this technical degree, and that was already like a big decision for me to be like, oh no, I'm going to do this technical stuff after studying a whole bunch of other things, and so now I'm going to be an engineer. And all of a sudden, I got to the end of my engineering degree and had, oh, there's some pretty tasty looking options, but they're not engineering. And do you want to, where do you want to go? Do you want to be an engineer, or do you want to do this Microsoft thing? And obviously I went the Microsoft route. But it was a big decision because I felt like I was starting to close the door on the technical side of things before even really getting out the gate. And I was pretty worried that, like if I miss out on those first couple of years of technical skills straight out of in the workforce, straight out of engineering, how is that going to put me placed in a few years down the line? When is that door actually going to be kind of firmly closed behind me? I didn't really know, but in any case, the Microsoft job roles were just too tasty to turn down, man. Like for a couple of reasons. I was pretty keen to have a stint overseas, so some of the Australian roles looked pretty nice. As far as like grad roles go, it's pretty good, man, in terms of the salary and the perks. And money shouldn't be everything that matters. Job satisfaction and purpose and all that, for me, and I would say should be for everyone at the top of the ladder. But when I looked at the kind of package I was being offered, plus the overseas stuff, plus there was a lot of travel. Even within the grad program, I got a trip to Barcelona and a trip to Vegas, and went to Bali like 2 years later. All work related trips, right? And like just that all up, I felt like I would have been mad to not pursue it. And so I did, and it was awesome. It was really, really great. I ended up in a role it was a sales role, but it was sort of a technical sales role. Basically, I'd get paired with a like an account manager. I was on the education team within Australia, so all our customers were universities and schools. There's a huge private school system over here in Australia, which is, which I don't know, needed a lot of love and attention from Microsoft apparently. So I'd get paired up with them. We'd have a list of accounts, and our job was to kind of go and make sure they're using Microsoft stuff and sort of like talk and sell cloud technology. But my role within that partnership was to speak to the techie stuff and talk to the IT guys and say, this is how a system kind of works, and this is the components that you can use, and this is how you implement it. But it was never hands-on. It was all advisory. And it was my job to keep up to date with what our products could do in a very general sense, and send them documentation as they needed, and to help get the sale over the line. My account manager was the guy that dealt ultimately with the numbers and the bottom line, and are you hitting those numerical targets and bring enough cash or whatever. So I didn't have to worry about that, which was nice. But I still had to put on my sales hat and speak technical language to kind of convince them to make a decision, make a business decision. So it was nice in that it was technical, but I missed being like hands-on keyboard. I missed actually doing the doing the implementation. That's something that Microsoft doesn't really do. We have a lot of partners, and so they have a lot of partners, and so we'd sort of do the sale, and then you'd call a partner and say, yo, can you guys actually do the work? But it was good, and it got me a lot of exposure into sort of how the tech world works and how Microsoft works, and a lot of sort of skills, and rounded out that business side of me. But like I said, I was missing the purely and deep technical stuff that wasn't available, at least in that role. I was in that first role for, I think, maybe like 3 years, and then got tapped on the shoulder for another role in terms of partner management. So the partners that I mentioned before that usually do the actual like implementation of whatever else, there's another section of the business with Microsoft that completely deals with the partners and making sure that they're happy and doing what they need to do from Microsoft's point of view to get sales done and all the rest. So yeah, it was at that point I was felt like I'd learned as much as or enough stuff to kind of look to move on. This role just sort of came up, like I said, I sort of got asked if I was interested, so applied and ended up getting it. Long story short, though, I didn't like that role at all, really. And this is where I decided to leave Microsoft, was largely driven by my dissatisfaction in that role. And I want to be clear that like I like nothing to do with like the people or the team that I was on or the company itself. Like I really loved Microsoft, and I was quite loyal as well. Like I felt like Microsoft had really set me up for a pretty good career, and I was on a pretty good path. And all of that was well in line, as well as again the money and also the ego of, oh, I work for Microsoft. It's all good stuff, man. And I got a lot of value out of my time at Microsoft, but I realized I had gotten even further down the sales path. That second role, that partner management one, was not technical at all. It was 100%. It was 100% sales, and it wasn't even sales. It was like sales management. It was like spending a lot of time with partners and calling them and being like, hey, how's that number going? Could be a bit bigger. Thanks. Like a lot of that stuff. And so it was it was tough. It was tough, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I just had this pretty deep-seated feeling of like, man, like as all the good stuff that are good about this pathway that I'm on, like, again, don't get me wrong, great company, great people, but man, this is not what I want to be doing for the next 40 years or however I've got long. And also just knowing, man, the longer I stay on this path, now that I'm not doing anything technical at all, my skills are just going to be dwindling even more. And so I made a pretty tough call, but 100% the right call for me and my mental health and my own sort of satisfaction to leave Microsoft. And again, to their credit, great, they were very supportive through that. I had a chat with my manager at the time. His name was Vlad, really good dude. He was pretty new to the management role as well. And when he kind of sat me down in our kind of one of our check-ins, I was like, Vlad, I'm not vibing this role. I need to get out. And he was very, very understanding, and I think and offered me a lot of support. To first, I spent a lot of time looking around within Microsoft to see if I could jump into a technical space within Microsoft. That was priority one. Like I said before, like engineering roles within Microsoft in Australia and New Zealand are fairly limited. There are a few and growing, I believe, but my options were pretty thin. I negotiated with my manager to say, I'm happy to stick around to the end of the financial year, which is June in Australia and for Microsoft. So this probably would have been maybe like April last year. I was having these types of conversations, and I was like, yeah, I'll stick around to the end of the financial year so I can finish off the work that I've committed to. And I hope that's all right. But after that, like don't plan anything for the next financial year for me, because I can't do it. And yeah, he's very, very understanding. Gave me a lot of support, a lot of introductions to other people within the business and in our partner space to say, hey, like, this is Calvin, this is what he's up to, this is what he wants to do. Can you help him out? and yeah, it gave me a lot of space to kind of find myself, for lack of better words, within those few months while working for Microsoft and still sort of being there on the payroll and doing a bit of work. They were very gracious, I think, in the support that they gave me. When they could have just been like, oh, kick you out the door, you know, as soon as I mentioned the words, I'm not happy in my role. Like, I imagine there'd be businesses out there that'd be like, well, there's the door then, you know, and they were the complete opposite. So that was kind of the exit process. I didn't find anything within Microsoft that met my needs. And then so just kind of went out into the world, which was pretty scary. I had a vague idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into software engineering. There are a lot of different roles, even with like software engineering itself is pretty broad. So there are a lot of things within that scope, you know, like, do I want to be front end, back end, web, embedded systems, something else? I don't know. I was like, I just want to be coding, you know? So I spent, it's probably maybe 2-3 months unemployed and skilling up. You know, I just spent my time, I guess, rekindling those software skills. Spent some time on like some personal projects, just so I had like developing a bit of a portfolio of here's some stuff that I've made. That's certainly something that helps, I think, especially in software engineering. You know, if you're going for a job and you can say like, yo, here's some projects and here's like some stuff that I've done, like, you know, in my own time for fun, that, you know, demonstrates my skills. So that was kind of the idea: build up a bit of portfolio, remember how to do techie things again, and then just spam a lot of places for jobs. I was lucky enough to get this role at Mod.io. Like I said, it was about, you know, maybe 3 months. I started at Mod.io. Yeah, it would have been I think 3 months after I left Microsoft, in a software engineering role. And you know, like I said, there were like software engineering is pretty broad, and there are a lot of directions that I would have been happy to take it in. There were a lot of jobs while I was applying that I would have been like, that's fine, I'll do that, you know, like that kind of fits the bill. But this role with Mod.io ticks like pretty much every box that I could have hoped for. So very lucky in that respect. Mod.io, we're in like the video games industry. We develop like a code base and a platform for game developers to use so that they can implement modding user-generated content in their games. So if anyone out there is familiar with, you know, mods, like you know, for example, like battle royale genres like Fortnite or PUBG, those were invented because of PUBG, which was a mod for Arma 3, right? So and then mods as well, you can, you know, just change skins and colors and all sorts of stuff. So what we do at Mod.io is, our customers are game developers, as opposed to, we don't make games ourselves. Like, we help game developers, and my job is to write like contribute to a library written in C++ that a game dev can import into their own game, so that they can use our service to manage mods and allow modding in their game, basically. But I say all that just to say, you know, man, like, it was a software engineering role, which is what I wanted, for one. Two, it's a startup, which I was pretty keen to get into, like a startup space, which was a nice change from corporate life. Very different vibe, you know, very small company. I think, you know, when I joined, it was less than 20 people. Now we're at about 30. And so, you know, pretty small, but also growing really quickly. You know, we got a whole lot of funding last year. We've got a lot of work on our plate for the next several years, and a lot of big ambitions as well, which is all really exciting. And again, very different to Microsoft, which was obviously already very well established. And it kind of felt at times at Microsoft that, even though, you know, you can work hard and you can see your own sort of numbers grow up, you're part of a really big machine that's just sort of churning away and doing its thing. Whereas I guess at Mod.io, it's much more tangible, the contributions that you're making. And then working in C++ is the language that I write in, which for me personally is, it's quite a low level language. So it's a lot closer, I suppose, to like, you know, the hardware and the memory that's going on in a computer, which is the kind of style that I was pretty into. And then it's in video games, and I love video games. So, and you know, and then the type of people that I work with, you know, a bunch of gaming nerds, and I love that. So yeah, very happy to be where I've landed, and very appreciative of the journey that's taken me to get here, even though it was a bit of a roller coaster ride, I suppose.
Love it. I love it. It's like, who needs Netflix? Eh? You just
Mm,
go and write your own story and take time to just reflect almost there. And it's amazing. But
yeah, yeah, thank you.
no, I just love. I think your proactiveness. Eh? Like you said, yes, you were unemployed, but you were still upskilling because, like,
Yeah,
you had the vision. And I guess if you wouldn't mind, just sort of speaking into the, yes, you were in Microsoft. Yes, it was paying well. Yes, there were still things that were beneficial to you, but you
mm-mm.
still had this vision to use your technical skills. And I
Yeah,
guess,
mate.
yeah, how important do you think that is, for those coming through?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think I think it's super important, man. Like it would have been very easy for me to stay at Microsoft in those roles, and just stay there and convince myself it's what I should have done. Because it was very good, man. I was in a role and at a company and on a career pathway that a lot of people I think would be super stoked to have and be very envious of, you know? And a lot of that I think had become sort of wrapped up in my own ego and identity as well. And, like I was, I'm earning a good living and I'm working for this fancy company and I'm, doing all this like fun stuff or whatever. And it was good. And I could have stayed there for a very long time and been like, this is good. And it probably would have been, and like I said, it was a great company to work for. And if I was in the right role, I would have stayed there. And someone who isn't me could have been in that role and been having a ball, so to make that clear, it was the decision to move just was a completely personal one that I just knew that it wasn't going to be satisfying for me in the long run. And I knew the longer I stayed in it, the harder it was going to be to leave. Um, it was helpful that, as down as I was on that second role, the partner management one, I think it's good that I found myself in a role that I was pretty unhappy with, because I could have been in somewhere lukewarm and not had the motivation, I suppose, to leave. Also, management change while I was in that second role. I mentioned Vlad before, being new into that role. He swapped over from a manager before that. And I think, as he came in, it was a lot easier to sort of, he was planning stuff out because he was new and wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page and, you know, getting to the thick of it. So it was a lot easier, I think, to broach with him like, oh, you're planning all the stuff, just to let you know, maybe plan without me. So I think there were a few things that facilitated my decision, and made it, maybe, gave me the courage or the push perhaps to get out, which I'm grateful for in hindsight. But it was pretty scary, man. It was pretty scary because it's in hindsight now, I know it's worked out well. So it's easy for me to be like, yo, take the leap, because it's worked out for me. But it was hard. It was hard, man. And when I chatted to people, I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna quit my job. Some people were like, oh man, amazing. Get after it, do what you want to do. And some people were like, bro, are you are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, so yeah, it was hard, man. But yeah, I just knew I was unhappy in that role, man. It wasn't meeting my needs, and I was pretty sure I could get those needs met by taking that action to sort of leave. And yeah, you mentioned the proactiveness, and that's a good shout as well. When I left my job, I had a it was a calculated decision. I had a bit of a bucket of savings, and I was like, okay, I can last this long before I really need to get a job. I think about like a good 12 months planned out of like worst case scenario. I can live for the next 12 months if I keep my budget at this level. And if everything really goes terribly, I guess I'll move back home to my parents' place and or something. I don't know, or crawl back to Microsoft and be like, it didn't work out how I thought. I don't know. So it was calculated, and I had a backup plan, I suppose. But yeah, I did make a conscious. It would have been pretty easy to quit my job and then just do nothing either. And this was like during lockdowns and stuff last year, and so it did. Before I took the leap, I made sure I had a plan, and like a bit of a task list of like, okay, here's some project ideas I want to spend most of my first month just sort of like reskilling myself and working on a couple of projects. And I was like, okay, second month, now that I've got a bit of a portfolio, I'm going to start applying for places. I'm going to keep track of where I'm applying for, what sort of skills they're after, make sure I get like a bit of a an understanding of if I'm heading in the right direction in terms of what I want and what I'm sort of positioning myself as to these companies. And so yeah, I was very intentional every step of the way. But also I think, you know, there's just a big element of luck when Mod.io came up. So you know, that's a company that I was, you know, I didn't spend too long on the job hunt front. Actually, it was one of the first few companies that I applied for. And so yeah, even though, you know, like I did have to deal with like a few rejections and a few sort of like, oh, am I approaching this right and all that sort of stuff, I was pretty lucky, man. I got picked up pretty quickly. So yeah, there's I can't discount that element either.
No, I love it, man. Yeah, I won't hold you too much longer, Calvin. I think it's just a couple more.
Yeah,
you know,
please.
just like obviously in this tech space, bro. And I love when you talk to people and you can see enthusiasm in their eyes. And you can see that, you know, it's awesome to see that you're happy. So I guess, you know, what would your advice be for those sort of considering the tech space or coming into the tech space?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, broad question. I think I mean, if you're interested in tech, go for it. And I think I'd say like I'd speak of that bit about that quite broadly as well. You know, like I like the technical stuff. You know, I like programming. I like sort of thinking through that. You know, those types of problems. Within Mod.io, I do now do a bit more sort of customer facing stuff as well. So it's not all programming every day. It's also chatting to game devs and saying, oh, how do you like our stuff? What do you need? What's giving you problems? And then going back and working on that stuff too. So it's fairly varied, even though my most of my time is spent, you know, coding and working on technical stuff. But also, you know, like on our team here at Mod.io, for example, you know, we've just done a bit of a blitz of hiring, you know, a lot of business development people who are out, you know, primarily looking for other game studios to bring onto our platform, for example. You know, Microsoft, like I said, Australia and New Zealand is mostly kind of like businessy stuff. So, you know, if you like the tech space, but you're not interested in the technical stuff, there's still a lot of opportunity in there as well. If you know, if you like sales, if you like marketing, if you like, you know, whatever else, there's probably, you know, the tech industry is big, so there's a lot of room to get into it. That I'm sure would match anyone's kind of interest, and it's a good space to get into as well. You know, it's growing, it's huge. There's a lot of really, you know, I like being on the kind of the front line and the cutting edge of interesting new technologies. So I guess like in terms of advice, I think yeah, I mean, at a baseline, you've got to be interested in technology, but there's a very diverse set of skills. So if it's something that you're interested in, I'd say, you know, find your path, see what kind of companies are out there, what type of work you're interested in, what sort of skills you can bring to the table, and get after it and see what you can find, I guess.
Yeah, no, thank you. Hey, look, if tech sort of gets a bit boring for you, you could always become a coach, Calvin, because that's some and advice there, man. So
Thank you.
I love it, bro. And I guess you know, just to sort of wrap things up, man, and it's really just thank you once again. Yeah, just I think just life advice. See, you know, what's something that you go by that you know has just stuck with you that you've sort of picked up along the way that you continuously apply? If my question makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know, man. That's a deep question. That's a big one. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, you put me on the spot a little bit. I want to think of something deep, but that also is like interesting and practical.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think for me, I don't know if it's helpful for other people, but yeah, I just kind of approach everything as like I just to be kind of like trying to find a balance of like working hard but also like chilling out as well, and like looking after yourself and making sure your needs are met and you're happy and you're satisfied. And I think, you know, there's a lot of different opportunities out there and a lot of different ways you can you know, carve out a life for yourself. But for me, I think the most important thing is the people that you're with and the people you surround yourself with and the kind of stuff that you are involved with that actually sort of satisfies you as a person. And even if you've got to take some scary leaps or get out of that comfort zone or whatever, it's worth it if it's something that's going to satisfy in the long run. But also, I think, I don't know, my main piece of advice is people just, I don't know, you can do whatever you want, man. Just like go after it, but just chill and enjoy the ride as well. I think that's kind of if there's any one philosophy that I do live by, and I don't say that to say become complacent, like don't be complacent with shitty stuff in your life, but enjoy the ride either way, I don't know. That was a bit of a, I don't know if that's very good advice.
No, it's good.
But
yeah, I think just jumping on the back of it.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned, it's funny because things are always good in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
But we always know, it's making the decisions, and I guess acting on that decision. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
I love what somebody said. Yeah.
I think that's not to go on too much of a tangent, but I think that's something that is quite important to recognize, that there's a big difference, I think, in terms of people's happiness in any given present moment versus there's like the experiencing self and the remembering self. That's not something that I thought of. I think that's Kellerman, maybe, like I don't know. I need to.
You said you were going to, but that's deep, man.
Yeah, but I think it's important, right? Because when you remember the past and you go, oh, things were so good in that moment, and it's like, oh, but we forget the suffering of day-to-day life. And I think I like, and like most of the time, like normal life is pretty drab and boring, but I like to live in such a way that I imagine myself in the future, remembering now and remembering how good things are now from the future, if that makes sense. I frame my life to create a good narrative for myself that I'm going to be happy about in the future, even if right now is terrible for whatever kind of reason. So that's there we go. There's my advice for you.
Yeah, I love it. It reminds you of a quote. I forgot who said it, but it says, "Do something today that your future self will thank you for." So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but enjoy the present moment as well.
Absolutely,
because that's all you ever have.
I'm with you, man. And I guess just final words, Calvin. Is there any final words you have for just our TupuToa whānau, bro, and obviously for tech?
Yeah, nah, man. I don't know. I think probably just to summarize the stuff that was spoken about, there's a lot of opportunity out there. You're probably capable of way more than you think you are. And just to don't cap yourself and check yourself and check what boundaries you might be thinking about or have unconsciously placed around yourself, and get after whatever it is that you think you need to get after. And I will say as well, if anyone out there wants to get in touch, or you can find me on LinkedIn or get my contact details from yourself. Always happy to chat to people and talk through things if they think it's going to be helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, bro. You took the words out of my mouth. But I think, just from on behalf of myself and the TupuToa whānau, Calvin, we thank you for your time. Thank you for your example, bro. And I really appreciate this kōrero, man. It's my favorite part of this mahi. And it's a blessing just to see you, come through your journey. And we look forward to seeing what's next day. And we're always here to help you too, whatever that looks like, even from this side of the ditch. So whenever you're back in Auckland, bro, make sure you hit us up.
Yeah, we'll do, man. We'll do. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm grateful to be a part of TupuToa, and more than happy to help out whenever needed, bro.
I love it, man. Thank you, man.